This is a neat thing we just got into. This is an autumn olive, which is an invasive. It covers a lot of our farms, compliments of the conservation department. They brought these things in the 70s as wildlife cover. One little problem, they got billions of little red berries on that the birds love. So the birds poop them all over your farms. And they take over. And you'll have a whole farm full of autumn olive. And I was death on these things. We were cutting them off and putting the crossbow on them and all that. And I read an article, it kind of made sense. What's that invasive species trying to do? It's actually trying to heal that soil. So what you've got here is you've got root exudates being fixated off the roots of that plant. And I come along with a chainsaw. I was cutting it off and putting crossbow on it to kill it. I killed all the roots, all that food-making mechanism, all the microbes. I was killing that. So I decided, okay, if you want to heal my land, I'm just going to coppice you. This is actually collarding. Coppice would have been down here. But I collared that one. I brought it up a little higher because I want that to grow back quick. And now I've got wildlife food. That's tremendous deer habitat. It's tremendous sheep feed. It's tremendous cow feed. And I'm still exuding plant food down to the soil. What really hit me, folks, is I saw this stuff growing in broom sedge. Broom sedge, dead soil. And I got to looking at it. I was out there lopping off little baby cedars in the wintertime. And every one of these I saw had beautiful grass growing within the drip line of that plant. If you got outside the drip line, there was the broom sedge back. But under the drip line, there was orchard grass, there was fescue, there was brome, beautiful grasses. I'm like, what's going on? That dang autumn olive had healed that soil under that plant. And I'm killing them? No, we're going to use it to make money. We're going to use these things to make money. And that's what it looks like. So if they come back, they really get pissed off when you cut them off. There's 50 stems on that dude. And sheep love that. We just got through, we're making some savanna on a new farm we just got leased. And we went through last fall and cut all these off. And I had to convince the landowner to leave the crossbow in the truck. He's like, dang it, Greg. I feel like I'm just wasting our time out here cutting these. I said, he's a deer hunter. I said, Steve, I promise you this is going to be good. Just give me a chance. So he did. Guess where we killed the big bucks this last fall? Killed a nice buck on that ridge. That ridge is full of these dudes. They're about that tall, and every single stem that came up is gone. The tips. Those deer are harvesting those tips. Deer are browsers. They're not grazers. Just remember that. They browse for their food. This is another one, honey locust savannas. Okay? This is a new farm we got. This is 240 acres. Hadn't had livestock on it for 70 years. Keep an eye on that four-wheeler. So this is what we're doing. You got a whole bunch of them. I talked to the landlord, said, I want to do this. So I cut everything down around it and left the nicest one. Okay? This particular one is a thornless honey locust. Didn't have thorns on it. They're out there. You can identify some of those. They still put the beans on. Do you realize the honey locust bean is 39% sugar? Those big black beans that hang off your honey locust is sugar. The old timers in the 20s in J. Russell's book, you all have heard of J. Russell? The farmers realized the importance of honey locusts. That's where they put their cattle at in the fall. They would fatten them on these pods. They'd fatten their cattle on pods. If you have one honey locust tree per 50 foot, on a per acre basis, it's equal to 50 bushel of corn per acre. 50 bushel of corn per acre. This is passive shade. These little guys, they get big. The leaves are small enough they let sun come through the tree down to the grass. Here's what they found out. The grass under a honey locust is a lot better grass than the grass out in the open. It's got a lower lignin value. Lignin is impossible for a cow's gut to digest. So the grass under a honey locust tree is actually better feed than the grass out in your pasture. There's a lot going on for these things, but you got to manage them. You got to manage them. You got to knock out the ones you don't want. Animal size, form follows function. Function of an animal is to perform in the environment into which it is born. This is in Mexico, Chihuahua. I went up into the desert ranches, Octavio, and I forgot his last name, Bermudas. Their grandfather was Billy Feenan. Billy Feenan had a closed herd, and he brought these animals in, 500 at the first, and he never brought another animal in for over 50 years. He only kept the animals that could do that. Over 50 years, he built an animal that's about this tall and about that wide, that lives on thorns and rocks. And that's what's up there, thorn and rocks. These are our animals in the winter. There's some more winter stockpile. These are some of the savannas that we're starting to produce. So this is a white oak timber. We're going in and taking shiitake logs. We are up to 800 shiitake logs now that we've inoculated. We're doing shiitake, lion's mane, and oysters. And we've got these all set with spawn now. And then we brought the cattle in behind them. We unrolled hay in there. We took a lot of firewood out. And we've got some nice saw logs. What we're trying to do, folks, is the trees that are left remaining is to leave a big enough area around them that the sunlight can get to the ground. And Jay Russell's book on acorn production, he said these white oaks they're not putting out acorns like they should. It's because we got them too close together. He said, if you'll give them a nice area around them, he said, you'll get a lot more acorns for your hogs. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to produce more feed for our hogs. Maybe we don't have to buy any as much supplement. I hate buying it. There's the, we do teepee style. There's some more pictures of it. This is the early stages of it. We're not painting the stumps, because we're going to be bringing hogs in. The sprouts coming up, the hogs, we're going to hog them off. And the cows like sprouts too. We're not burning the brush piles. We're leaving those. We're actually going to chip those into wood chips that go on a compost pile. Of course, we get firewood out of it. And we just bought a sawmill. I got to keep these interns busy, okay? And we've got an intern now. It's a blacksmith. He built those hinge gates. I'm like, Jacob, you've got a really art. You can build stuff like that. So we're starting to look at marketing gates. There's the shiitake. You can get 3 crops a year out of those if you'll soak them. They call it forcing the fruit. Folks, you need to figure out how to grow them in San Francisco. My sister was just there. I got a sister that lives up there. She just texted me or emailed me this week. She said, Greg, I went in the store that Shirley shops in. That's my oldest sister. Shiitake mushrooms are $99 a pound. What? $99 a pound? Folks, you can get 3 pounds of mushrooms off these things a year. That's $300 a log. You need to figure that out. You can figure that. You don't have to use oak. You can use other trees. Check it out. See what trees you have here in California. You can get these things growing, man. I mean, there's some serious money to be made, I think, in shiitakes. And if you ever eat them, eat one grown on a log versus one grown in sawdust. All the stuff you buy in the store, it's all sawdust grown. Eat one off a log. It's like eating a T-bone steak. They're delicious. And they're good for you. Very good for you. Some of them are pretty big. We've been doing a little bit of swale work. We did a workshop, permaculture workshop with Mark Shepard. This was in the fall of 2014. We built a series of swales. And we've got some swale ponds now. I've actually got those stocked with some fish. There's coons, turkeys, deer, starting to use some of these. We're doing a little bit of compost tea work. This is a sprayer that I had custom built that goes on the back of a four-wheeler, so I didn't need a tractor. We're just starting to work on this fungi. It's too early for me to give a lot of reports on it, but I'm still encouraged. That's our compost tea brewer. We actually brew the tea overnight. We're starting to build landowner Hugo beds. That's something you can offer a landowner if you get a lease on a farm. Build a Hugo bed out there and let them do that. We just mix all the seeds together in a bag and shake them up, spread them all over the pile, rake it lightly, and that's it. You never have to water that bed. You don't do anything to it. You just pick vegetables. And I put, I think, 15 different species of vegetables in there, and you go out at night and just pick a salad out of there. That's something you can offer your landowners. Build some Hugo beds. That's our pigs. That's our tree swallow program. An adult pair of tree swallows will eat about 8,000 flies a day. So we've put up 450 tree swallow houses. Look, before you start putting these up, get on the internet and see what the range is. Make sure the tree swallows are in your range. If you're out of range, you're probably not going to get them. But there's a certain area of the United States that they come in the fall, they go back to South America.
Are there any other birds that?
Yeah, bluebirds love them. You got to be careful with sparrows. Don't put them close to barns. Don't put the houses close to barns. There's a good, make sure when you build your tree swallow houses, it is a tree swallow house, not a bluebird house. The bluebird houses are too small. The bottom on a tree swallow house needs to be 5 inches by 5 inches. Make sure you do tree swallow blog. That'll get you to the right ones. Folks, we can't sell a deer, but we can sure sell a chance at shooting a deer. So we get $2,000 for somebody to come in to shoot at a buck. It's the best and easiest money there is to be made on your farm. Ian has 18 species of big game now on his farm, and he sells a right for you to come in and shoot a warthog. He gets $2,500 for a warthog. He's like, Greg, I wouldn't hang that ugly thing on my wall. But some people like doing that. So you need to be able to harvest solar energy. That's what it is. You're harvesting a renewable energy source. You grew the forage. You bought the land. You improved the soil. The animals came in. Market it. Market it. That's Elaine Ingham. We did a soil workshop showing participants how to build the compost pile the right way. Quote, nothing in nature is given. It is won. What do y'all think about that quote? Nah, you got it. That's on a major agricultural building. Every day the kids walk up the steps. It's engraved in marble all the way across the front. That's what we're teaching. That's what we're teaching today, folks. It's sick. In other words, if we don't get a big old club and beat the heck out of Mother Nature, or a bigger tool, or a bigger chemical, she's going to whip us into submission. No. There is such a good living to be made and working in sync with nature. We got to quit killing stuff. We got to quit killing stuff. We need to learn how to build life. We've killed stuff too long. Our soils are dead. We don't have any animals now that can live without all these props underneath them because we've babied our animals. That's our grazing school coming up in 2016. Well, this year, May 7th through the 9th at Ian. We hold it at our farm. That's our website, greenpasturesfarm.net. There's lots of stuff on there, some of the stuff that we're doing on the farm. And with that, I've left a little bit of time for questions. If anybody has any, looks like we got one back here. Yes?
Just real quick on the honey locust, I had a conversation last night, and they basically said that they can go from thornless to thorn, like they can.
Yep, did y'all hear that? They can go from thornless to thorn. That is correct. That's why it takes management. You can take a thornless tree and put it out there, and it will produce, in other words, the beans on it, some of those will be thorned. Now here's a cool one. You can take and graft, take a thorn tree, whack it off, go get a limb off of a thornless tree, and graft it onto it. Now you've got a thornless tree, but you still got the pods. Folks, there's a guy at the University of Missouri. He got his PhD in honey locust from Michigan State. His name is Dr. Michael Gold. They've got a tree on the research farm there. I've got the beans. He gave me some of the beans. I think it may be related to the Hershey. Hershey is a variety. It takes 45 pods to equal 1 pound of beans in the wild. This Hershey tree, it takes 13 pods. They look like bananas. They look like bananas hanging on the tree. So if we can get those and get those growing on our farms and then graft onto those, you've still got the thornless and you've got the pod, but some of those could produce thorns. So you got to control them.
And so management is just eradicate those.
Yep. Yep. Companion, cut them off. Yes, sir.
I know you sell to direct markets, but do you also sell to auctions or have?
The question was, how do we market our livestock? Is that a fair question? All the culls on our farm, an open cow, a cow that loses a calf, fescue foot, a dink. If she gives me a dink calf that doesn't grow out, she's gone. We just sell those to the commodity. I'd say 90%, 85 to 90% is sold direct to Rye, Scott, this lady, Hatch, Daniel. If they want a quarter of a beef or a half or whatever, we'll sell them that. We can't, what we do is we have to get enough people together to bring one in. I can't touch the meat because we're selling at a state inspected plant. Now I can sell within the state of Missouri. I can't cross state line. Now if it's federally inspected, I could, but we don't use the USDA plant. It's kind of hard to get into those. We've only got 2 within 100 miles of us. The plant we use is 6 miles from our doorstep. Family owned. They do a great job. I just can't touch the meat. We're selling trailer loads of meat, or trailer loads of live animals. That is our biggest sale right now. I like that. So let's say Scott has a grass-fed meat business, and Scott lives up by Chicago, and he just doesn't have enough land. But he's got tons and tons of customers. He can't keep any grass-fed beef in the freezer. Scott comes to my house. This is what I get per pound for a finished steer. Scott loads on 14 of my steers on his trailer. He goes across the scales. He came across empty, and then he goes back across full. I meet him at the scales with my trailer load of beef. I walk mine onto his trailer, and he writes me a check for what that tear weight is, the difference. So there's no sales commission. There's no vet check. There's none of that stuff. As long as the animal you're going to butcher, you don't even need health papers to cross state lines, as long as you're going to butcher it. Now, if it's a breeding animal, by all means, make sure you get your health paper, because if you get stopped, you'll probably get a ticket. Yep.
How would you prepare tilled cropland for grazing?
How would I prepare tilled cropland for grazing? Boy, I tell you what, I would sure go to Gail Fuller's or Gabe Brown's farm. Go to Gabe Brown's if you can. He's in North Dakota. He's a crop farmer. He's a livestock farmer. He's probably one of the best in the United States on these cover crops. Taking worn out, a lot of herbicide, a lot of pesticide, a lot of fungicide, dead soil, and converting it to pasture land very productively with cover crops. See, the problem is, Peter, is when you take worn out cropland and you go in there with a drill and you put seed down on sterile soil, there's no life in the soil. There's no organic matter. There's no carbon there. You may not even get a stand.
What if you have very fertile soil?
Well, if you got very fertile soil, that's a different deal. Most of your cropland in our nation is not very fertile. I mean, it's pretty bad stuff. And so it's better to do something to get the root exudates, get some carbon in the soil, than that fall go in there and put in your grass seeding, if that's what you want to do. I don't. I put down hay. That's what we did on our crop field. I didn't do anything special. I just went out and fed hay on it in the wintertime. The next year I started grazing it. Whatever came up, that's what I grazed. So you can spend a lot of money on seeding. Let me get this fellow and I'll get you, ma'am. Yes.
Do you do any mineral supplementation with your cattle?
The question is, do we do any mineral supplementation? Yes. We're using Free Choice Enterprises. That's the name of the company. It's in Wisconsin. Matter of fact, the talk on Saturday, I've got a picture of our mineral program. Basically, it's a table, and it's about as long as one of these right here. It's a little bit wider. It's got 8 mineral feeders down that side and 8 coming up this side. And it's got a big, thick rubber top on it. That's called cafeteria-style mineral. There's 16 minerals in there, and the cows get to select what they want. Our cattle mineral bills went down about 50% in 7 years. Folks, cows poop out about 90% of the mineral. And so what happens when you put them on a paddock, the cattle graze it, let's say there's no phosphorus in that soil, they'll go source phosphorus out of that box and they poop it out on that paddock. Over time, the plants will get more of that level of mineral that's missing, and the animals are the only ones that know. There's no lab that knows. The problem with giving a complete mineral is they may go after magnesium, they need magnesium, and they'll overeat on the mineral, and when they do, there's something else in here that ties up the magnesium. Their body can't even utilize it because it's all together. So cows have the ability to select. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Could you expand a bit on what you mean, what you mentioned when you talked about swale ponds?
Soil what?
Swale ponds.
Oh, can I elaborate on the swales of the soil? Yes. What we're trying to do, we just did it on a small trial. I did it on 2 small farms. They're actually hooked together. The swale starts on one and goes clear on to the other one. And what we do is we brought a laser transit in there. And we started at the top of the hill, and you run this swale. There's only 1 foot of drop every 100 feet. What you're trying to do is keep that water up on the side of the hill as long as possible. And when it comes off that first swale, it dumps out onto the point of the ridge. And then it travels down to the next swale. And then it'll travel along that swale. And so if you have a series of swales, you're holding the water up on your land, growing more grass, growing more trees, in our case, more trees, because we planted 1,400 trees along the base of those swales, so that every time that it rains, those trees get a drink of water. It's slowly seeping through that swale instead of just running off down the hill, okay? Over time, we're hoping, we'll have these nice, look like silvopasture tree lines along the edge of these swales, with peach, apple, cherry, maybe even put in some grapes. Some of the stuff that Mark Shepard's doing in Wisconsin. Y'all are familiar with Mark's work, Restoration Agriculture, that's his book. He's got over 100,000 trees planted on 100 acres up in Wisconsin. It looks like a food forest up there.
What's your alley spacing between the swales?
Our alley spacing was about, probably 200 feet. The one thing that I am struggling with is grazing that. You put cows, you get 3, it wouldn't be bad if you had 20 cows, if you got 300 of them, they can tear a swale up pretty quick. And those swale ponds, you got to protect them. When they're in there, we run a polywire around them so they can't crawl off in them. Because they'll be in there just bigger than heck. On a hot day, heck, I would. I'd jump off in that dude. It's 100 degrees, go get you a swale pond, jump in it.
So
Yep.
are you fencing not just swale ponds, but any pond? Do you fence them?
Every single water source on our farm is fenced off temporarily. When the cattle leave, we roll up the wire because our landowners like to fish. I don't want to catch a fish and be fighting it, bringing it to shore, and there's a hot wire in front of me. So we just roll it up and we're done.
So with your experience, there's no way to really manage them correctly around a pond where they can utilize those. Say if you didn't have any other water source in your paddock.
That's what we use. We use ponds a lot. But they drink right from the pond.
But you have the
We have a wire right on the edge.
Okay, so they can still get, but they can't get down.
Exactly. Ian calls it a big livestock tank.
Okay.
Yeah. He gets on me about my tire tank. You're wasting money. I'm like, no, I like my tire tanks. But yes.
Do you have any suggestions for using grazing to transition a predominantly alfalfa hayfield into something more diverse or grass?
Oh, that's a tough one. The question was, do I have any ideas on converting a strong alfalfa-based hayfield into a pasture-based field? Yes, I do have some suggestions. One is, when you go into that alfalfa field, You don't want to go in there when it's in full bloom. Make sure that it's past maturity. They're not near as likely to bloat.
Yeah.
Don't graze that thing in the morning when it's got dew on it. Wait till noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon when all the dew's off that alfalfa. Over time, the grasses will come back and dominate, but it's going to take some time. That's one of the biggest wrecks I've seen in Indiana. I saw a guy, he loses about 2 head every year grazing alfalfa.
Yeah, I mean, we've had success grazing them in the fall.
Yep.
But you think just gradually after doing that, right now we're still haying in the middle of the summer.
Yeah, bloat guard, you can put a bloat guard tablet, a block out there before you turn them in. Make sure they have that. Other thing, dry hay in the gut. Make sure they have some dry hay in the gut before you turn them in that alfalfa. They can't bloat. Now, how are you going to get them to eat dry hay if you're grazing green grass? You've got to lock them down. You got to put them on a small area where that's all there is in there. They don't need very much. They only need maybe 4 or 5 pounds of that in their gut, and they're fine. And don't give them the alfalfa field for a full day. Put them in there for maybe an hour the first day, the next day 3 hours. Gradually work them into that diet. Don't just give them the field. You're probably you may kill something. But over time, I don't like alfalfa from that standpoint of grazing, because if it gets to be much more than 30% of the sward, you're going to kill some animals. I mean, it's just going to happen. And it's always going to kill the biggest, fattest one, because they're always big and fat. When you find them, they're dead. It's not a good thing to do. But alfalfa, it's got its place as long as you don't get too much of it. But I would rather use a clover like a red or the Lespedeza. It's non-bloating. Bird's foot trefoil, that's another one. It's non-bloating. But, that dang alfalfa sends down a heck of a taproot. So it's helping break up that hard pan. And in a drought, it'll be green. Yeah, so as bad as it is in some respects, I love it in another respect. Yes?
In our area in Texas, most of the ranchers keep their cattle on just coastal, and that's about all we have, just coastal due to mismanagement. And then eventually they'll have them under irrigated
Pivots.
Yep. With either rye or oats. In that situation, dealing with pastures like that, how would you get quality forage?
Well, Bermuda grass is a pretty tough one. It's hard to stockpile. If it gets too tall and rank, the cattle don't like it very well. The only thing they found that you can stockpile Bermuda grass is you've really got to hit that stuff and make sure it's short in August. And then whatever grows back that's new, that is winter stockpile. But the minute it gets snowed on, it's ruined. It just goes down. Well, you don't have any snow, so you don't have to worry about that. But on the pivots, I don't have much experience with pivots, other than I don't like them because, you got to pump it. And folks, if you've got to pump water, I just had a young lady email me this week. She said, Greg, if you were starting in my footsteps today, she lives in Arizona. She said, where would you start your grass-fed operation at? If location was no issue, in other words, you weren't tied to your family, where would you go? First question the first response out of my mouth is where I get that stuff at, naturally, where I get rainfall. Make it easy on yourself. 30 to 40-inch rainfall, that's where I would go. I would go where I get some kind of rain. If you're in a low rainfall area and you got to pump water, you're not going to be able to pump water. The city people are going to take it. Don't put your whole life into a farm, and 10 years from now, the utilities come in and say, sir, you're not giving those cows our groundwater to drink. It ain't happening. You can't water that grass with that water. Ain't going to happen. So make sure you're in an area you still get rain, you can grow grass naturally. That's my deal.
I'm from a row crop family, generations.
Yep.
For about 100-acre field, it costs about $1,000 to
$1,000 an acre to irrigate, yeah. Yep. Yep, I've worked with people in irrigation up in Nebraska, same deal. They run these great big diesel engines to pump that. He's pumping about 1,000 acres he's irrigating. It's really costing him some money. So yeah, don't go where you got to pump water, because you're not going to be able to. The government's going to step in and take that water. I hate to say that, but I think it may happen. Yes?
If you do have an animal that dies, what do you do with
What do you do with an animal that dies? It depends what it dies of. Like on bloat, if we can find the animal and it bloated and it's still warm, I butcher it. A bloated animal, there's nothing wrong with that meat. Usually, if you can find them warm, that's the meat you can grind into hamburger. A dead lamb or a dead sheep, that's pasture fertilizer. I grow more grass with that sheep. Compost them. I'll tell you this, if you're going to compost a cow, make sure you put a layer of logs down. You've got to put some pretty good dead logs down as a base. First of all, put the logs down, put a layer of wood chips down, then put the cow on that. Then cover her up. You've got to have a lot of carbon for that dead animal. So let's say the animal weighs 1,000 pounds. You need to have about 4,000 pounds of woodies to take all that cow up. Don't be turning her either. Go in 10 months, pull that stuff back. If it stinks, come back in another 3 or 4 months. When it doesn't stink anymore, she's good. Don't be pulling and turning that. I'll get you, ma'am, then I'll get you. Yes? What's that?
With perimeter fencing, you say you don't like the steel posts. What do you do when your neighbors each have a fencing on all sides of your property?
What do you do?
Fencing different.
What do you do if your neighbor's got steel fence posts already there and that is your perimeter fence? What would I do?
Yeah.
I would run an offset. In other words, if you've got a good fence that'll hold your livestock, you and your neighbor, you need at least one hot wire going around the inside of your property. And the reason I like that is so that when you're reeling your wires out, no matter what part of your farm you're on, you've always got an energy source to power up your fence. So you can put an offset out there, maybe a foot. Don't go too far out. If you go 2 foot away from that fence, well, first of all, you've ruined a lot of forage. Your cows can't graze, and that'll grow up in brush. So about a foot, and keep it fairly high, about 32 to 34 inches for cows. For sheep or goats, you're going to need probably 3, to keep them. We've got two offset wires on a barbed wire fence that keeps our sheep in very well. But it's hot. It's 10,000 volts. There was another, yes, sir.
If you find one of your animals with bloat, what kind of cures do you have for it?
If you find one of your animals with bloat and it's soon enough, first of all, why did they bloat? They lay down their feet uphill. And it's amazing. It's amazing. It doesn't take much of a hill. But that cow lay down and her feet are uphill. If she doesn't get up in about 3 to 4 hours, she's dead. That rumen starts digesting those gases, and if they can't get up and stretch and belch, they're dead. It doesn't happen very often, but it's happened. Well, I've had cattle for 25. I've probably lost 4 in 25 years, but it's always sickening. You'll see them, and their feet are uphill. I had a bull lay down one night against a cedar tree. It was cold. He got underneath the cedar and he got his feet uphill. He's dead. Wasn't anything wrong with him. He just got his feet uphill and he couldn't get up. His back was against the cedar and his feet were uphill. You can see where he dug around trying to get up. He couldn't get up. There's not too much you can do. If you catch them when they're still alive, you can stab them with a hollow, something that's sharp and hollow, or even a knife. The gauchos in Argentina, I think it is, they can run by them at a dead run on a pony, spot a steer, and just stab them in the side and never stop running. And it lets the gases out. You got to get the gas out of the gut. Sometimes they'll die, even after you get the gas out. It depends how soon you catch them. It's between the ribs. And I'm not even sure. I've never had to stab one. I hope I never.
It's right
They're all.
in that death triangle area. We've had
Is it? Okay. Did y'all hear that? Stab them kind of right in that death triangle area. Yeah. Yeah. Hope. Yes, sir.
When you're stockpiling forage on a pasture, are you trying to do warm season grasses? Like, is there a big difference between stockpiling warm season?
The question is, when you're trying to stockpile grasses going into the fall, do you want to try to stockpile cool season or warm season? You want to stockpile cool season grasses. Warm season grasses just go to crap in the fall. Matter of fact, your cows will walk through that stuff. They'll trample it on the ground, but they won't hardly touch it. They're looking for cool season grasses in that warm season. So that's the problem. Don't get over 30, 40% of your farm in warm season grasses. because you can't stockpile them. I mean, we've got some warm season fields, and I love them for the summer, but I don't want them in the wintertime. That's not going to provide me very many animal days. Folks, there's more money to be made in the winter by not feeding hay than any other thing I know. And it's all done by growing stockpile in the fall. Let me extend on that a little bit. So, in the springtime, when your plants are coming up, we talked about taking that top third. We are starting our stockpile in April. But Greg, it's April. We're not even close to winter yet. I don't care. If you wait till August 1st and say, Greg said you could grow stockpile. That's what I'm going to do August 1st. You're too late. You've got to get that plant started right. So in the springtime, you take the top third off, let that plant come back. You're starting to trample some of that on the ground. The next time we call that growing your haystack. So as you get going across the summertime, now it hasn't rained, you still got a healthy plant. You're only taking about a third of it. You still keep moving, and then it rains. My gosh, you're going to grow so much grass because all your farm is in that stage where you've left 2/3 of it. People say, well, I'm going to stockpile my back 40. What? What do you mean you stockpile in the back 40? No. Stockpile the whole dang farm. We graze our entire farm in the winter, not the back 40. Now, we may not get as many animal days off every paddock, but by gosh, those cows are going to be out there. We're going to put them on every single paddock on our farm. Some of those paddocks, we may get 100 animal days per acre. Some of them may only get 20. But we're watching the grass. We're watching the grass. Don't take it down too short. There's some feed out there. Harvest it with those animals. It's been frosted on. It's dry. It's brown. Your cows are going to have a big old smile on their face. They'd a lot rather eat that than hay. You should be able to stockpile your whole farm. Okay? You need those animals out on the land and not up around your barn. We've all been taught you haul your feed to the barn, you feed your animals around the barn, and then when the pastures get solid enough, let me cover that and I'll get your question. When the pastures get solid enough, then you can start putting your cows out. Folks, when it rains, move your cows. Move your sheep. Give them a bigger area. When it's raining and it's soft, you need to open your area up. Give them a bigger area. Move them faster. Don't run them up in a sacrifice lot. They will destroy it. We don't have a tractor. We don't have any way to feed hay when it's really puggy. We have to graze. It's forced us to be better grazers. Yes, sir.
You have a similar rotational plan for your stockpile feed?
Do we have a similar what?
A rotational plan for your stockpile.
The question was, do we have a similar plan for our stockpile rotation? Y'all are awesome on questions. I'll just point that out. That's a great question. I wasn't going to get into it, but I'm going to get into it. I got time. Nobody's left the room. What we do is in the first rotation around the farms in our winter stockpile, we'll take the top third of the plant. We come back around again, that same farm, before we leave it, we take the next third of the plant. And then we leave the bottom third. So what we're doing, folks, that first rotation around your farm, you're taking the candy, the quality. But we're looking at maybe December, January. It's cold. The cows need the energy, okay? We come around that farm the second time. All the good parts of the plants have been grazed off. There's still a lot of feed out there, though. We're going to give them double the area. So we're going to make up with quality with quantity. We're going to give them a lot bigger area on that second pass. By God, they'll eat it. And that's because it's been rained on, it's been snowed on, it's had cold weather on it. It's got that animal smell off of that forage. Those animals are happy out there. They were just there 30 days ago. They're happy. You get that grazed off, go to the next section of your farm, do the same thing. We're walking cows a mile to the next farm. So when we leave in the winter, we go ahead and get all that. And then go to the next farm. They're like, Greg's going to give us some 3 Musketeer bars. Look at this. It hasn't been grazed, and they just fight. They're out there chomp, 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 taking that off. But make sure you have enough for another graze. If you can go around your farm twice in the wintertime, and maybe if you have some thin areas on your farm, that's where you want to put your hay at. Already have it out there. Buy your hay in July, August. Get it put out there. And folks, if you're going to buy hay, take the time to put a log underneath it. Put a log underneath it. We cut our logs 4.5 feet long, about that big a diameter, and this is our 4th year on the same logs. We stack them up when we're done with them, get them off the ground. You put that log on 32-inch center underneath a big round bale, that dang bale's like a brand new bale when you feed it in the wintertime. It doesn't rot the bottom of it. Get it on a log. Doesn't take anything. Put a log underneath it. You bought that bale. You gave $30 for it. Preserve the quality of the hay just by putting it up on a log. And you put them out there where your pastures are thin. That's where you unroll your hay and you come through on that rotation. Maybe not even feed hay the first rotation. You're grazing stockpile. The second rotation, you might put out some hay. Do everything you can to preserve some stockpile for April. When that grass is about that tall, folks, you're in trouble. It's too watery. You've got to have some dry matter that was grown from the previous fall. So when those cows reach out to get that green blade of grass, they're getting some brown with it. Man, the gut on those cows works good. They get fat. All the tail heads are clean. There's no manure running tails. They're beautiful. They're beautiful. And you can tell you're doing a beautiful job in the spring when your cow pats are stacking up about an inch and a half. If they're real tall, you're not going to have that problem. They're going to be real runny. They're going to be flat and runny. If you don't have any way to get any stockpile in them because you don't have any this year, put some dry hay out there. Let them have a little dry hay, then give them that green grass. It's going to make them perform a lot better. Okay? Man, you all been awesome. It's time to wrap her up. Thank you all.